Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, sex. 10-sentence stories. In the sex series of 10-sentence stories, published in David Boles blogs at bolesblogs.com, we are confronted with the realities of sex and its power to control us and condemn us. In our first story, we meet Brianna, someone you shall never soon forget. Tell me a secret. 10-sentence story number 158. Originally published June 6, 2012. Brianna walked into the cold classroom, shivering, beneath her sister's red hand-me-down gingham dress, freshly pressed white socks, and shiny black patent leather shoes, as a pale man, sitting behind a small desk, looked down at her from above and pushed his glasses back up to the bridge of his sloping nose and said, "Tell me a secret, Brianna." He crossed his arms and finished. "And then tell me why you're keeping that secret." She looked down at the shiny linoleum floor, mirroring her terrified face back up at her. She scuffed the tip of her right shoe as she kicked her reflection in the face. "Come now," the man demanded. "Just one little tattle, and then you may go outside and play on the slide." Brianna took a deep breath in through her nose, as her mama taught her, and exhaled slowly through her mouth, as her daddy begged her. Then she shook her head and closed her eyes, as she had learned herself. "Then you'll stand there the whole day long," the man dismissively whispered through a puff of swirling cigarette smoke. Brianna bit her tongue and tasted the red saltiness of her own life, and muttered, "My poppy touches me at night where my bathing suit fits." The man shifted behind the table, and his chair squeaked, and he growled down at her. "Go on, then. Tell me why that secret is a secret. This is a test, you know." "It's a secret," Brianna said, through choking sobs as tears glistened in her eyes. "Because Poppy said if I told anybody, he'd kill my kitten." "Well, that's it then, Brianna. You have passed the exam. Your analytic thinking is quite fine, and we will move you right along to the 4th grade. Please wipe your tears in the bathroom before you go outside to play." Brianna nodded and left behind a trail of reflective blood droplets, shivering on the floor, that had leapt from her mouth in a final sacred, silent scream to save the life of her cat. In our second story, we are confronted with the idea of faith and power and self-determination. And Kathy will tell you her story in this next story. Kathy and her Catholic hospital sterilization. 10-sentence story number 150. First published February 22nd, 2012. When Kathy crossed the threshold of her local Catholic hospital, with her latest child squirming from her birth canal, she could feel her heart beating in her fingertips, and she was terrified and filled with shame. She'd had enough children, and she wanted to start enjoying sex without having to worry about the nefarious curse of her husband's sperm and her incredibly fertile eggs over the following 9 months. Kathy knew it had to be done, and she didn't feel bad about coming to a hospital she tithed to as a good and faithful Catholic for the last decade or so. It was her turn for help now, and she came to take her share home with her. After the baby was removed from her, Kathy's body was invaded by foreign hands and familiar tubes and cold metal tools. She took comfort in knowing 20,000 women before her had knelt down before him and had their tubes tied under the same sort of religiously sanctioned circumstance. Using standardized hospital discharge data, she found that between 2000 and 2009, more than 20,000 women who gave birth at a Catholic hospital in New Jersey and 6 other states had their tubes tied. 85 hospitals, almost half of those providing obstetric services, were doing sterilizations to end fertility. Among these were Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center in Camden and Lourdes Medical Center of Burlington County in Willingboro, where they found 282 women, 6% of those who gave birth, were sterilized in 2008 and 2009. Kathy prayed to her God, and she thanked him for giving her so many blessings of children. She also thanked him for providing a safe way for her to now honor and raise her children without living in fear of getting pregnant again. Kathy looked into her newborn's eyes, and she knew this child was her last and most precious gift, and she vowed to love him just as much as his 10 brothers and sisters. In our final story, As Death is Among Us, we find Elizabeth in the last throes of her life, waiting for the gargoyles to take her away, and the lingering hints of the residue of sexuality in situ dims. Elizabeth's Last Breath. 10-sentence story number 105. First published December 8, 2010. And so Elizabeth knew the gargoyles had leapt from the top of the cathedral and come down to earth to take her back into their dark realm because she could smell the wet earth wiggling between their toes. She cringed as their ape-like feet clawed at her gown, but she appreciated being able to touch the ground again through them because her hospital bed had been stifling the life from her for over a month. Elizabeth knew she was weak, and that she had little ticking time left. And so she turned to her children and smiled. "Be good," she urged them. "My strength leaves me to become you." Her children nodded. One of them wiped away a tear trickling down Elizabeth's face. "And you," she turned her head and struggled to catch her waning breath on the inhale. "You were a great man, but not a good husband." He took a step closer and held her outstretched hand. "Now, be a better father." A gargoyle grabbed her other hand and began to plunge her under, and as her heavy heart and battered breasts and growing liver all began to sink her, Elizabeth found one little last puff of life and quickly whispered, "You cannot marry my betrayer." And so she was gone, having lived a full life that, in the end, was filled with a bitterness wholly of not her own making, but completely of her ultimate undoing. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.